Hey everybody, Kevin here from ChangeWorks Interactive. Welcome back and welcome to the show. As I had mentioned before, I'm a registered psychotherapist, and today we're very lucky to have Dr. Joël Villeneuve that's joining the show today. Let me tell you a little bit about Joël. She's a Bachelor of Science grad from the University of Waterloo and from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine in Toronto. She's done a lot, this woman. She is a personal trainer, she's a TV host, she's a media personality, and she is a national speaker. She has founded a project called Powerfoods 101 in partnership with the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation in support of Complementary Medicine Cancer Research. I didn't know this about you, Joël, but you were recently awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award for your contributions in health and wellness. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. She has a husband, Mike. She's got two fantastic kids named Caden and Kobe. And let's not forget her dogs that have the most awesome names in the world, Roxy and Lola. I absolutely love it. She skis, she bikes, she enjoys traveling, and when we get back to normal, I'm sure that's going to be something that she is going to want to do. She's always trying new recipes, and every time that I get a chance to speak to Dr. Joël, I feel a little bit smarter and I feel a little bit more energized. So let's get into it right away. Dr. Joël, I read something from the book that you published a few years back on Powerfoods, and I'm going to refer specifically to chapter 2, and it's called From Now to Wow. And what I really loved is a quote in there, and I'll read it for you if you don't remember it. It says, "Make adjustments where needed, and remember, the goal is not to be better than others, but better than your previous self. If anything seems overwhelming, just break it into smaller steps. By focusing on your health, all of your other goals will follow, whether that is the food that you eat, the thoughts that you have, the sleep you're getting, the feelings you have about self, the play that you engage in, relationships, and exercise." So I love that we're discussing this topic today of being a better version of yourself. So maybe right off the bat, Joël, maybe I can talk to you about, or maybe you can give us some feedback on this whole idea of stress, because I know you want to share something with our listeners about stress. And this has been unprecedented now with COVID going on. Maybe you could share some of the research on stress, and in particular whether there's maybe any form of healthy stress that's out there, examples of that, and if we're experiencing just unhealthy stress, what does that do to us? What does that do to our bodies? How do we react to that?
Okay, those are great questions, Kevin, and I appreciate being here. So hi to all of our listeners.
Great.
And yeah, it's about us connecting, about us, collaborating and just creating a better version of yourself. When it comes to stress, and of course, given the circumstances now, people are outside of their norm. And people adapt to stress by creating routine. It creates comfort in the mind. And when you're taken outside of that routine, you have to readjust. And uniquely to this situation, one of the research studies actually was done with individuals who were in concentration camps and mental health. And what was found is that interestingly, individuals who expected to be released, the next week or the next day, they actually didn't fare as well as those people who were realistic with the situation and said, we're in this for the long haul, and let's make adaptations, and this is life right now. And, if life changes, then that's great. So what they found, because we can see it, it's like everybody stay home. No, now you can go out. Oh, now you got to come home again. Oh, now you can go out again. So there's a lot of start, stop. So what we want to do presently for the COVID situation is adapt a long-term routine. You know, a lot of people have a routine of going to the gym, but now that the gyms are closed at this time, what happens is people are lost. So we have to create a new normal for ourselves. But when it comes to stress, there's basically 3 types. And so the first type is feeling overwhelmed. So this is when you walk into a space and there's just a lot of things happening. And, you know, I'm sure we've all been there before. But in that situation, you know, like once I was bringing my son's friend to a birthday party and I picked him up and he just seemed to be a little out of sorts, but away we went. And, you know, I went to drop him off at the birthday party and my son ran off. And then, because there's lots of cool things happening, and he hung onto my leg and he wasn't going to the party. He was going to have nothing to do with it. And, you know, I tried to see it through his eyes and, you know, we walked in and there was a lot of chaos. You know, you've been to a kid's birthday party, right?
You've been to Chuck E. Cheese. Have you been there?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I felt like grabbing onto a kid and saying, help me.
Exactly. So what was happening is he was overwhelmed. So what I did is I broke it down into smaller steps. So instead of looking at the whole room, we just said, let's go to the craft table. Let's start making these paper airplanes and let's focus on that. And, you know, he didn't want to go. And I said, well, you know, this is a lot of fun. You know, I'm just going grocery shopping, you know, and he's like, no, I'm coming with you. and so then he got started and he got connected with one other little boy. And what I did is I just made the world smaller, you know, and it just felt more comfortable for him. So that's what we want to do for the overwhelmed kind of stress. There is an actual system of organization. It's called Kanban. It's a Japanese system of organization, and it was brought here to North America when the automotive industry came here. And all you do is you just do 3 columns. And most of us do some version of this, but this is nice. And I have mine on my armoire and I just open it up. And every day before I go home for work, I set the tone for the next day. So what you do is you write down everything on your to-do list on little sticky notes and you put it in column 1. And then every day you only move over 3 things. Your A, which is today, your B, which is this week, and your C, which is this month. And you move those 3 things forward every day. And then when you're finished, you move them over into the 3rd column, which is you're finished. And every time you finish 5 things, you reward yourself. Right? Because all too often we go through these to-do lists and we never feel accomplished.
Right.
Yeah. And you know what this does is research shows that it actually, if you leave a task and we can only handle about 3 things at one time, it takes 20 to 30 minutes to become re-engaged. So if you're doing 20 things, you're not being very effective. So that's one thing. Yeah.
Right. And I think, Dr. Joël, what we do too is that we have a very difficult time. We can't separate now because so many people are working from home. We can't seem to separate, you know, the office life from the home life, that it's just blended into one another. And it's difficult for people to separate that.
Yeah. So what we want to do is we just want to create time there. And so at home, just create your office environment, wherever it is, your little corner of the table, and just put your schedule in place. So again, remember the mind likes structure. So we're going to say, you know, from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, I'm working. If you've got kids at home, I used to put like a little flower pot at the front of my door. And if the kids saw that, they knew I was working. And unless it was a really important question, it was going to wait until noon. So, you know, that's one strategy. But the second kind of stress is difficulty making decisions. And, you know, I had one client who came in and he was trying to buy a new pair of skis. And he had researched all the skis on the market. And then he said, you know, like 2 or 3 visits later, I said, how's the skis going? How's the skis going? And he said, well, I finally made him a decision, but now the next model is out. So that's the analysis paralysis.
Right.
And yeah, the core of that is a fear of making the wrong decision for all the cascades of things that come. So in that circumstance, we have to give a timeline. We just have to simply say, I'm going to research till the end of the week, and I'm just going to make the best decision available, you know?
Yeah.
And we're not looking for perfection. It's
Right.
just, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And yeah. And then the third type of stress is the unknown. And a lot of people have troubles with this one. And that's because the mind doesn't like wide open space because there's nothing to attach itself to.
Mm-hmm.
So in that circumstance, what I recommend is putting a jungle gym in your mind and giving your mind points of attachment. So, for example, I grew up in a very small town, and it took me literally 3 minutes to get across the city. And so when I went to Toronto, I had to go to school. I was living with my now brother-in-law and sister-in-law. And I was talking to my mom and I said, well, tomorrow's Monday. I don't really know how long it's going to take. And, I'm just not sure. And she said, well, why don't you just drive there today? So what I did is I drove there. And then in my mind's eye, there was a jungle gym. There was points of attachment. And I'm visual, so I could see everything. And then it was just like, whoa, okay, everything's all cool, right?
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So, and lastly, the other important study is from Harvard. There's actually a couple of them. And what they did is they actually divided the room into two sets of people, two test subjects. And one group, they said, okay, stress is horrible. It is going to create all kinds of chaos in your life. You're going to get lots of diseases. These are all the diseases that happen from stress. And okay, go live your life and we're going to track your health and we're going to see how it goes. And the second group was told that stress is normal, that you have the resources that are there, and that stress can be a good thing. And you're going to manage. And if not, there's lots of tools that you can have as resources. And then they follow them throughout a lifetime. So what do you think happened?
Well, I would guess that I'm guessing that the second group, probably with the optimistic view, probably had many different health outcomes than the first group. I would imagine the second group probably had a better quality of life overall.
Exactly. So what they found is they actually tracked the diameter of the vessel, interior vessel of your cardiovascular system. And what they found is that there was a 21% increase in sudden death in group 1 versus group 2. So in essence, stress does cause disease and is not a good thing, but it's only the perception that stress is a bad thing, right?
Isn't that something? What a great example. That's amazing. That's amazing. Let me switch gears on you a little bit, Dr. Joël. In your book, you talk about the 5 pillars of health. Can you let us know a little bit about these 5 pillars? And while you're describing this, is there any one pillar that's better than the other in your description?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And, when we're speaking about change, we always have to ask ourselves, where are we going? Where do we want to go? So these 5 pillars, I gave examples in the book. The examples I gave in the book are high quality food. Centenarians, they generally tend to eat more of a plant slant menu. And centenarians are people who live to be over 100.
Yeah.
And then there is mind, which means that we always want to grow the mind, learn something new every day. Number 3, there's self-care. And in that, we've got sleep, we've got, look after yourself, play, laughter is the best medicine. Number 4 is relationships, because when we are in a good relationship, we get a lot of release of oxytocin, which is a counterproductive hormone to stress, cortisol. And then number 5 is exercise. Now, what I can say about that is there's no one thing that's more important, but what I think is the most important takeaway is these are just examples. And everybody needs to set their own 5 pillars, because it really depends on what your anchors are in life. And if you're being fulfilled with your 5 pillars, then your health is going to be well. So, I encourage everybody to just take like a few minutes and just write down the 5 things that they know they need in their life to feel well.
That's great. That's great. I wanted to ask you what your opinion was specifically on some of these power foods. And now I'm assuming that you're probably going to let me down a little bit here because beer and chicken wings probably isn't on your list of power foods. But if you were going to recommend even Dr. Joël, some of the things that we probably should get as part of our diet, what kind of things would you say go to the top of the list there? And maybe on the other side of it is, these are the things that we need to avoid in terms of food.
Sure, that's a great question. So on page 26 of my book, I've got the power foods listed. But to highlight, I would say one of the key foods is turmeric. Turmeric is a Middle Eastern spice, and it has lots of anti-inflammatory properties. You could make a matcha latte with a touch of turmeric in it, and it tastes amazing, and it gives you a nice kickstart for the day. Another food that is very powerful is flax seeds. Flax seeds contain a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, and that helps to reduce inflammation as well. And then lastly, what else? Well, I would say that maybe one of the other foods would be wakame, which is a seafood. And if you ever go to a Japanese restaurant or order in, you can order wakame salads. And I would say that's the jewel of the sea. It's like a multivitamin in a cup. It's got protein, it's got iron, B vitamins, just packed.
So on the other side of it, Dr. Joël, what are those things that we should probably really try to limit? And I know, just talking to different clients of mine that, some clients will say, oh, I'm drinking too much wine these days, or yeah. I'm engaging in these type of behaviors that might not necessarily be very healthy. What kind of things would you advise in terms of food or drink to, just be mindful of?
Sure. So what I would say is the number one food which wine fits into that we want to nix is sugar. Because within 30 minutes, your white blood cells can actually be reduced 50% when you have great amounts of sugar. So it really affects our immunity. So sugar would definitely be up there. Mm-hmm. But what I always try and look for is what is the root cause? If people are craving sugar, why are they craving sugar? And some of the common reasons are, number one, they're not eating enough. So sometimes throughout the day, life gets busy and then you don't eat enough. So then evening comes and your body's trying to get fueled and make up. Mm-hmm. Number two, not enough protein. So sometimes that happens. And then number three, when people lack serotonin or they're tired, you will crave sugar because sugar or chocolate will give you a little bit of a kickstart of serotonin. So, there's healthier options. And what I talk about is nutrient density, so for example, if you crave chocolate, maybe you could have strawberries dipped in chocolate, right? And then that way you're still getting a little hit of what you're craving, but yet you've got nutrient density there.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Let me change a bit on you again. I really want to know how did you you're going to school. How did you decide that you're going to get into this whole world of naturopathic medicine? And maybe for maybe even there's listeners out there that might want to get into the field themselves. What kind of things did you think about before getting into this field, and what might be some of the barriers maybe that people would have getting into a program in naturopathic medicine?
Oh, okay. That's a great question. So, speaking of change, what I felt is I've always been interested in health and fitness and nutrition. Mm-hmm. So that was natural, but I wanted to approach medicine in a broader spectrum and say, what can we do from lifestyle that makes a difference? And I know for myself that exercise is my anchor. And if I get that, then I'm good to go for the day, like bring it on. But you might get the grumpy Joelle if I haven't worked out. So, I think it comes down to what is meaningful to you. And for me, it was making a difference and in a meaningful way. And to me, I connected with nutrition and exercise and, more of a natural approach to health. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. I know you and Mike and the kids you're always involved in something, usually really good causes around the Ottawa area. Is there anything that's near and dear to your heart these days, or special projects that you're diving into?
Yeah, right now I am working on a brain project, a brain protocol. So there's a Dr. Bredesen who has created a protocol that really helps the mind. And again, the idea is about prevention and, as much as possible, just improving our energy, including our brain energy, to help reduce the risk of some of these, dementia, potential Alzheimer's. And there's a real hormone influence, there's a real food influence. And so I am working on creating a protocol there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Joelle, what I get from you when I listen to you, I'm always I always feel like there's other things that I can do in my life, and there's other things that I can think about. So I thank you for that, particularly when it comes to food and healthy living and just a holistic way to look at your life. So I really thank you for that. And I want to really thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. It was a pleasure. And I appreciate being here.
Awesome. Awesome. So for our listeners out there, again, stay tuned on all our social media platforms to listen to our show, Changing Gears. If you want to get in touch with Dr. Joelle, I will also post her information on our site. So I welcome you back. Please, everybody, stay healthy and stay safe, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.